Introduce a new friend to you. I got to know her through a writers group that we're part of online, and I'm so glad to have Erica Anderson here with us on the show. Welcome, Erica.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and honored that you're having me on.
Good to talk to you today, and I've been so encouraged. Caroline Beidler, shout out to her for setting up this group, and a bunch of us connect every month, and I've just learned so much every month and make some new friends, and it seemed like a good opportunity to tell people about you because you got a really cool bunch of stuff going on that I think people can learn from. But let's start with just kind of a high level, give people an overview of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, like I said, my name is Erica. I live in Indiana. I'm married. I have two kids. You have just your typical suburban, busy, crazy mom life, and love
Yeah.
that. Love that life that I have. But what led me to our group is, I struggled with alcohol dependence and dysfunction for many, many years of my life. So I didn't ever expect that I would be talking about it publicly, that I would be writing a book about it, which I am. But it has been so cool how God has used something that was such a big problem in my life and brought me to be able to speak to so many people and to be able to connect with others who are doing such great work in the world for our hearts and our minds, and just figuring this life stuff out because everybody's got their thing.
Right.
But to go back a little bit, I guess, my story in terms of alcohol started in high school, like a lot of people, drinking for fun, pretty innocent, experimenting type of thing. But I quickly learned that I felt that there was an unhealthy relationship I had with alcohol, like different maybe than other people. And looking at my family history, in hindsight, I can see there's a lot of genetics that go into that. We have a lot of addiction in our family. And so it made sense that maybe that's the way my body reacted. Of course, there are many, many factors that go into how someone gets addicted or why someone is dependent or is more prone to use a substance to help them through whatever. But for whatever reason, it was that way with me. And through the course of my life, from college to young professional years to early motherhood, I used it in these different ways. But I think that the key point is I used it. So very much I looked at it as a self-medication that, I never hit rock bottom. I never ruined my life, but certainly there were moments that it could have gone the wrong way. And it was definitely extremely oppressive for me for many years. And I just didn't know how I would ever get out of that for so long.
What was oppressive to you? Like, what was the kind of thing going on in your mind and in your life that made you realize, hey, this may not be helping me?
It's almost like a compulsive thing where you feel like whether it hits 5 o'clock, it's the end of the day, like you're triggered to drink, or it's an event where you have one and your body just, you say you're going to have one, but then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're going to throw that out the window. It was almost like I couldn't say no. Obviously I could, but your body and mind feel as if that is going to be so hard. And you feel like it's almost like something else is compelling you to do it. Someone else is driving your car to the liquor store. Someone else is going to the refrigerator and taking it out when you know that they shouldn't. Someone else is making your decisions for you. And that feels extremely out of control. It feels scary because if you tell yourself, I'm not going to drink today, but then you do, and you go, I couldn't do it. And I had those days I said I wasn't going to do it, and I did it anyway, and I felt like I couldn't stop myself. And I think when I started to get to that point about 5 years ago, there were some things that had happened while I was drinking, and I just thought, this is getting scary. I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. Do I want to be dealing with this when I'm 50, 60, 70 years old? And the thought of that being something that I was dealing with for my entire life really scared me and also gave me a reality check.
So what did you do when you got to that point? Like when, not everybody can just stop drinking alcohol. Like what
Right.
did you do?
Yeah, I certainly didn't just stop drinking. It's usually a lot more complicated than that. I think it started really years before that when I started asking questions where I would be secretly Googling, what's an alcoholic, or moderate my drinking, or just like, is there something wrong with me? It's like questions that I had that I didn't really know where you would get the answers. Because to me, as many people know, like as many people see, the stereotype of alcoholic is like, a person that has lost their job, they are getting a DUI, maybe they're getting their kids taken away, maybe, they're ruining their life in some way. And I was like, well, that's definitely not me, right? And the term alcoholic is very loaded. And I know many people today who maybe in my position don't want to use that word. And I don't typically use that word because it can be, I guess, subjective. But I just started sort of looking around online, but really not finding much. I mean, I would say that started about 10 years ago. And back then there were a lot less resources and a lot less people speaking out about this. The landscape has really changed, thankfully.
Yes.
And so, but it started there with curiosity, which is why I am so big on that idea. And I have a little website that I've set up called sobrietycurious.com as a place for people to go and download a toolkit and all of these resources that I have. But I just love that concept of curiosity because you have to start there. What I find is if you tell yourself, I have to quit drinking, that's scary, that's too much pressure, it's scary, it pushes you away. And so I had to start just asking some questions and hearing from other people, and allowing myself to do that was the first step. Then I started buying sobriety memoirs. I would listen to interviews, podcasts, just hearing from people who had been where I was or worse and had stopped drinking or changed their lives. And that sort of gave me that first spark of like, okay, they did it. I'm not stepping in there, but like maybe, I don't know, possible. And it wasn't until I joined a community group in 2020, an online support group, that I think made the most progress. I didn't do that for many years. And I would say if I had advice for anyone, it would be like, you need to find that because that will fast track you to a much better, more secure, confident place where you can get the tools, resources, and support that you need.
Wow. So I think you're right. There's a cultural moment happening now that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you had alcoholics and religious people that didn't drink, and pretty much everybody else. It was normal to use it, right? To use alcohol. So you had religious reasons why you didn't do it, or you had a problem and you were just an alcoholic and you needed to stop drinking, or you were going to get a divorce or another DUI or something or get fired. Now, I think science is finally telling the truth, because what I think some of the listeners might not know, they probably heard me say it before, but most of the science that for 20 years implied that there were some health benefits to alcohol, drink a glass of red wine, help you live longer, and resveratrol and all those things. Most of that science was sponsored by companies that make alcohol. And says the truth is that true science has never really shown any health benefit. And now we know there's at least 7 different human cancers that alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen trigger for. And it's just not healthy for you. So there's no legitimate reason now to drink alcohol other than if you intend to change how you feel in the moment. And so I think that's helpful, is that people are talking about the truth. And I think this other group is people like you and people like us. And we made a decision. Alcohol wasn't helping us anyway. We lost a son in 2013. And it was one of those things where you see people go through a hard thing like that, Erica, and they say, I'm either going to use a substance to get rid of how I feel, anesthetize myself, and that will become a problem for me if I let it. Or I'm going to learn how to process what I feel and live with it, and learn how to let my emotions come out and be managed in my life. And alcohol doesn't help you do that. So I think it's nice that we have this moment where you got support groups like yours, communities that are building up, that people are having honest conversations about it. So as for you, you found this community, and at some point you decided to start kind of leading in that space. So how'd you get to that point where, hey, I can help other people?
Yeah, well, it was pretty quick when I stopped drinking. So just a quick backstory is that I tried 30 days a few times, maybe made it, and then, kind of went back. Ultimately, I went for 6 months at one point, kind of felt like I was barely hanging on, ended up going back to drinking after that. That happened in early COVID days where there was every excuse in the world. People were talking about how much they were drinking. And I mean, that was just like, honestly, a common conversation. Like, guess I need to order more wine. Like, what else am I going to do? And honestly, those, as silly as those kind of justifications are, I used them then and before then for all kinds of things. Like, oh, drink, you deserve it. You're a mom. Like, you deserve to have a drink at the end of a day. All of those things, I would use those justifications very willingly. And I ended up doing that in COVID. Quickly got back to where I was before I was drinking, or before I quit drinking. And that's when I sought out the support group. And very quickly, I sort of recognized that being open about my sobriety was going to help me in my sobriety. Now, I do tend to be an open person. I've always had a blog. I've always written about things in my life. And so that's a natural sort of inclination for me, even though it was uncomfortable at first. But I took on this idea that identity at this point in my journey was important. So for me to say, I don't drink, I'm sober, like that, for some reason, that helped me keep going. Because when you start to say like, oh, that's just not who I am, I don't do that. Even if you mess up or whatever, I'll tell you a quick story. This is, so I know that she can be a controversial figure, but Joyce Meyer, my mom used to listen to her back in the day, and she has this story that has always stuck with me. And she told the story of, she would go to church, and then in the middle of the service, she would go out to her car and lean the seat back, and she would smoke cigarettes. And she would say while she was smoking, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. And she would do that. And she was doing it like because she wanted to be a non-smoker and she wanted to get to the point. And ultimately she did. But that always stuck with me. Like, I feel like that does in a way start to change your mindset around who you are and what you do. And so that was something that I did really early on, like sort of slowly, little bits at a time when I first started sharing. But soon enough, I realized there were almost no resources for Christian women dealing with this problem. Lots of secular resources, and I have learned a lot from those. Like the group I was in is called the Luckiest Club, was an amazing support for me. And I just was writing the thank you notes in my book, and I thanked that group because I was going to meetings 2 or 3 times a day, not because I was desperate, but because I could. And it was so amazing to hear from people that were just like me, who I didn't even think existed. But there was a missing element for me in that. Like, I was like, there's a lot of spiritual talk in sobriety groups, but it's not Christ-centered at all. And so I would feel very disconnected from some of those conversations. And I was like, I need people that love Jesus. I need to talk about this with people that have a faith like mine. And I was like, there's hardly anything out there. Not books. I mean, there are, I'm not gonna say there's none. I've met people since then who have written books, like our friend Caroline and my friend Sherry Hoppin and Christy Osborne. And so there are some out there, but not a lot, and definitely not a lot that are sort of mainstream that you're gonna find in a bookstore.
Right.
And so as a writer, I had already written 2 books, and I'm a freelance writer for a variety of places. I just knew this is my next thing. Like, I'm not even choosing it. You know, I think that's how it's been with my other books, is I felt like God just sort of said, just like sort of shoved me in this direction. Like, yeah, this is it. Like, this is what I'm doing. And it was just natural for me to share my story. And when I did, I would hear from people who would say thank you, who would share their stories, who would let me know that me talking about this was a breath of fresh air. Because what we find is that Christian women specifically do have a little bit of a harder time sharing this with people because of the shame that is attached to it.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Christian women have a different standard to them than other people might?
I think, first of all, women in general do have a little bit of a different standard. One of the most interesting things that I was writing about in my book is just the history of women when it comes to alcohol. So if you look back, you know, even in movies and books, you see like men are typically, you know, the ones with the drinking problem. Women are the moral bastions of society. They're keeping the family together. They are the ones that are like rallying for the temperance movement, and all of these things are just seen as like not the bad guy when it comes to alcohol. And even in movies, you know, even in books that I read, like I would rarely see a woman as the person with the problem. There's the movie When a Man Loves a Woman is one of the few that you'll see, with the movie with Meg Ryan where she's struggling. Like that's one of the few where you see the woman having a problem, which I was fascinated by that movie when I first watched it before I got sober, because I was like, anything about it at the time, I was just eating it up, because I wanted so badly to feel seen. And so when it comes to women, there's that side of things. When it comes to Christian women, even more so, especially moms even have more judgment, because you're supposed to be perfect Christian mom. It's just, you're not supposed to have this problem. I think that's what it was for me. It was just like, people were like almost confused sometimes when I would, you know, if I would mention it or share a prayer request, or even family members of mine were like, I had absolutely no idea that you were struggling. And that's because it's not assumed that someone like me leading a Bible study, taking my kids to church is going to have this problem. And so it almost makes it harder to share because you're like, you feel like you're disappointing people. You're putting your reputation on the line. You're wondering, are people now going to question me and my faith and my motherhood and who I am? There's so many big questions that it's almost like, never mind, I don't want to talk about this. I'm not going to deal with this. And I don't want people to do that because I think there's so many that suffer in silence, and it doesn't, again, like they may not be ruining their lives, but are they living their best lives? Are they free? And I think a lot of them are not. And that's why I wanted to come out here and say, you don't have to live like that. You don't have to be ashamed of this. You can work through this in a way that's going to get you to the other side.
Right. I think that's fascinating. Let's talk about your writing for a minute. Because you wrote a couple of books before you decided to go alcohol free. You know, Leaving Cloud Nine is the one that I'm familiar with. Talk about your writing career and what those books are in case somebody out there wants to check out your work.
Yeah, it's really interesting how my books have sort of all led into one another. My first book, Leaving Cloud Nine, is a little different. It's a memoir. It's actually a memoir of my husband's life. Long story short, he grew up in a very traumatic, abusive, alcoholic environment where he was, you know, in the midst of drugs and domestic violence and poverty and all of these things. So that is the story of his life going through that, having PTSD, going to the army, all these things, and the way that God redeemed his life, which is a beautiful, beautiful story. But it was through his story and getting to know his mom's story, who she's the one that had, I mean, he didn't have a father, but she had all these addiction problems, which led me to start thinking more deeply about addiction in general. So I then started writing a little bit about the opioid crisis and sort of seeing how that was drastically and devastatingly affecting so many people, especially children, which led me to statistics about how faith and church going are such an antidote to things like addiction, depression, suicide, all of these things. Like if you go to church and you have a strong faith, all of those things are you're going to have less of that, basically.
That's right.
I mean, obviously not in every situation, but I was fascinated by the statistics because I thought, on the suicide hotline webpage, they've got everything except for something about faith. And yet faith is such a strong way to, you know, dissuade some of this. So anyway, my next book was called Reason to Return, Why Women Need the Church and the Church Needs Women, because I saw women leaving the church. And as women are leaving the church, we're seeing depression, anxiety, all of these other things increase. That's not just because they're leaving the church, could also be because of all kinds of things with the internet and society and all of that. In the midst of writing that book is when I started this whole journey, and I wrote a little bit about this in that book, but my church family was really, really important in becoming free from this at the outset. And so ultimately that's what led me to this. But in terms of, you know, the rest of my writing, I've been just so honored and privileged that God has given me the ability to write, the opportunity to write in places like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and Christianity Today and the Washington Post. I mean, like, gosh, listing all those off, if you had told me that 10 years ago, I would have laughed because I didn't even know that was possible. And I do think that getting sober has opened up so many doors as well, just because I've been able to focus on something else. And that sort of relationship and the clarity I have with God and the purpose for my life is so much brighter. And so I am a lucky girl that when I was in third grade, I said I want to be a writer when I grow up, and I grew up and now I'm a writer, and honestly, I couldn't ask for more. It's amazing.
Wow. Well, I love your Substack. So worth your time on Substack, and you are not afraid to speak into politics, as faith and politics and where they intersect. And I won't give anything away. If somebody wants to check out Erica's writing, I'll put links in the show notes. But not for the faint of heart. Like you don't pull any punches. You talk about what you feel and what you believe. And I think most of the people listening to this probably line up ideologically with us. But I think you've done a great job of defending what you believe, defending it on the faith front, on the political front, on the behavioral front. I think you're doing a great job there. And now you've started this organization or this work called Pitch and Publish. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So as I was learning, hey, I can get published and I can be a successful writer. I found myself telling a lot of people about it because I was so excited, but they weren't really the right people because they weren't people that wanted to write. And I thought, well, I could teach people how to do this, right?
Yeah.
And so just sort of on a whim, I was like, I'm just going to start this thing. And I'm a very big proponent of done is better than perfect, and move fast and do it and fix it later. And so that's what I did this off about 3 years ago now, and have been able to turn it into a great sort of writing coaching, writing teaching business where I am teaching courses and classes, helping people learn how to shape and formulate their ideas in a way that will be appealing to editors at national magazines, newspapers, or smaller publications if you like. I also work with people on their book proposals and book idea shaping, having been in the midst of that whole process. So yeah, it's been really fun. I love writers. We're all often creatives at heart. We have so many ideas, like too many ideas. So I like to help people sort of round those up and find a little bit of a focus. But it's been really cool to use my creative energy in that way. It takes a lot of time and work. Like, it's funny because it's the thing I probably put the most work into and make the least money from, but because I love doing it and I love people, I can't stop. And so it's great to be able to have the opportunity to be a freelance writer where I have the income that allows me the time to devote to something that I really love. So that's pitchandpublish.co. I'm totally really kind of separate from my book, but it all kind of links together if it's writing.
I think you're doing a great thing. And I brought that up specifically because there's a number of people that watch this show or listen to this show who are aspiring writers. I can think of two sisters that write in a lot, and both of them are trying to break into writing book proposals and trying to find an agent, doing that whole thing. Like, what kind of advice would you have for a young writer who's trying to get started today in this climate?
Well, it depends on your goals, but I would say you can't go wrong in starting with trying to publish your work in a publication. It's always going to be a step toward the book proposal or the book that you want to write if you start writing about that topic somewhere else. And the reason I would say start there is, number one, you get to test your ideas, you get feedback from people, you get experience, you start making connections and making a name for yourself within the world of whatever that topic is. It also gives you an opportunity to direct people back to your website so you can start creating an email list, which is going to be really important for your book proposal. You'll learn that later. But I say start writing, whether it's you start a Substack or you write a piece on medium.com, which is just a platform that you can publish on yourself. The other piece of advice I would say, because I hear this all the time, is don't save your writing. Like, if you have a good idea and you're like, well, I want to write about that in my book, doesn't matter. Write about it now. You need to advance that idea. The more that you write about it, the better you get to writing about it and the deeper that you go into the subject. So I would say, like, I don't save any ideas, and you can ultimately write about the same thing multiple times. I've written about this drinking issue for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Christianity Today, and all three pieces are very different. And that's because you just get better and more powerful at your words the more that you use them.
That's right. And we'll put some links to some of your articles in the show notes so people can find you. But I think a lot of people think that there's some sort of gateway that they have to write well enough to get past. But the truth is, nowadays with Substack, with self-publishing, like you need to get in the game of writing because you get good at writing by writing, right? Like any other exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is I'm a pretty prolific writer. I'm a fast writer. So I probably write too much, honestly, because then I end up neglecting other duties that I need to get done. I've had to stop myself this week because I had to finish my book this week. And I was like, you cannot write a Substack. But yes, like, get out there and get writing. There is, honestly, that's one of the reasons I started my business, is because I wanted to say there is no barrier to entry. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to have been a writer in a previous life. Like, you have to have a good idea. Now, you probably need to be have some decent skills. You certainly don't have to be the best writer in the world, though. When it comes to pitching articles, for example, it's not really so much about how great of a writer you are. It's really what is this idea? What is this perspective? How are you shaping it, and where are you coming from? That makes the idea interesting. Your editor is going to help you with the actual writing. And so that's, I think, a misconception that people have. The other thing I would say is, this is another great point. An editor will tell you, from the New York Times to Cosmopolitan to whatever, we don't care if you have published a lot of writing in the past. If you can shape this idea and send it to us, they will publish a first-time writer. It doesn't matter. And that's the great thing about this, is that anybody can step in and start doing it. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it's possible, and you don't need any prerequisites to try.
Right. How many rejections do you get on average when you pitch stuff to major publications?
Well, I used to get more rejections because I was just getting started. Now I'm much more solid in, like, if I'm pitching, I have a lot of good connections. I know editors, so it's a little easier, but you're going to get a lot of rejections. I mean, when you're first starting, like let's say 90% rejections, because a lot of that's learning process. It's, I say getting your reps in. You have to do it to get feedback and to learn how to do it better. I mean, when I started, I look back at some of those first pitches when I didn't know what I was doing, and I'm like, that's embarrassing. Like, no one, like, of course they said no, because I didn't know I didn't understand what made a story. But, I still get rejections for sure, or just no response. But you just have to understand that, number one, there's a lot of reasons for rejection, and it's not always because your idea is bad or because you are a bad writer. It could be because they just written something on that. It's a really busy week. The news is overtaking them. They don't have time. Like, never believe that it's because you have a bad idea necessarily. But also, I think really good ideas, they have to find the right place, hit the right editor at the right place at the right time. And sometimes that means you have to set something aside and come back to it 6 months later and try again. I think stories are sort of alive, and we have to tend to them, and we have to really give them the TLC that they need to find the right place to where they need to go. And that takes patience, and some people don't want to do that. Like when I was talking to someone the other day, and she was saying she wanted to write a book, and I was like, yeah, I mean, if by the time you get an agent and publish the book, if you get a traditional book deal, I mean, it's probably going to be a minimum 2 years. And she was like,
That's right.
Oh, I don't want to wait that long. And I was like, that's how long it takes, know? And you just have to believe that things will happen in the right time. But if starting now is better than starting tomorrow. So
that's right. That's exactly right. Circle back to your book that you're writing now. You said you just finished. Like, tell us a little bit about, I know it has to do with your journey of getting alcohol free, but you already have it publisher? Is it sold?
Yes, so it's with IVP, University Press,
Okay.
and yeah, been a really great experience. I just turned in the structural edits, so that's like the very first round of like major edits that your editor gives you. We're kind of on a fast track because they want to publish it in January for Dry January as a sort of a marketing hook.
Yeah.
So it's been a little, I honestly, I started writing the book in like June, and then I finished it, I think just before Christmas. So that was like actually pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we've been kind of going back and forth since then. But yeah, it will be coming out in January, and the title is Freely Sober, Rethinking Alcohol Through the Lens of Faith. Nice. And that, it's never the original title, just by the way, that's for anyone listening. It's like, you come up with a title, that's probably not going to end up being it if you're working with a publisher. But I love this title, Freely Sober, because it really evokes the point of what I'm saying, which is that you don't have to get sober, but you can choose to be sober.
That's right.
And you can learn, and that's the whole point of the book, is I want you to walk into this book and read it, and at the end of it, you're not going to think about alcohol in the same way, because you've learned so much about the history and how it affects you and what it means and why we do things, and you're peeking behind the curtain of the marketing industry and how they have completely just targeted women to the point of like we're almost victims by what they've done to us. Like when you look at the rates of women and dying from alcohol related illnesses, like men have like been on this like steady pathway. Women have been like this.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to do with the alcohol marketing industry. And so when you see that, when you hear that, I always like to say you can't unknow what you now know. And once you know it, like you are going to make different decisions.
That's right.
And so it's like, not do I have to get sober? It's do I want to get sober? And not do I have to do this, but am I free? Am I free or am I not? And so it just like sort of shifts the paradigm in how you think about it without putting pressure on you to do anything. Like I say, don't stop drinking just to read this book. Like feel free to like continue whatever you're doing while reading this book. I just want you to open your mind and heart to what it says and to what God wants to say to you. If you're reading this as a Christian, just pray, just put a little anointing on it as you read through and just believe that he's got something to say and be open to what that is. And he will give you the strength to make the decision that you need to make next.
Amen. We'll have you back on the show when it's time for book launch.
Thank you.
I work with all the IBP publicists. They pitch to me all the time, but you just tell me when it's time. We'll have you back on the show. Look forward to that. What do you have to say as a word of kind of final encouragement to somebody who's like kind of sober curious, is thinking about it, hasn't hit rock bottom, but realizes it's not serving them? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, I think I like how you put that. It's not serving them, because I think that, we will have readers from somebody that is, drinking every day and feeling like it's controlling them, to maybe someone who doesn't drink every day and doesn't feel like it's controlling them, but is still questioning it and feeling like it's maybe not the best thing for them. So I realized that we have a spectrum here. But I would say, I was just talking about this yesterday in a video I recorded, where the reason I want to do this and speak to the person that's listening is that, like, I felt at one point, there's just no way that I can quit drinking for the rest of my life. That sounds too hard. It sounds not fun. And it sounds like impossible. How could I possibly do that? And sitting here on the other side of things almost 5 years later, I just want to say that it is possible. I want to say that you can get there to where, believe it or not, I almost never, ever think about alcohol anymore. It doesn't cross my mind. And I am truly free from that. Is there a moment occasionally when I have a craving, or like I'm like, oh, that'd be nice, sure, like occasionally, but it's so easy for me now. I have trained my mind to go back over the reasons why I do or don't do things, and to play the tape forward to see what would happen if I did this. Like, I go there and I see this is what would happen. I'm not going to do it. So I would just encourage you to, like, not commit to quit drinking forever, but just to open your mind to this curiosity, to read, listen to podcasts, just be like, I don't know, let's just see what happens, because that's your first step forward without expectation. And also, last thing I would say is, just like I was mentioning, at my website, sobrietycurious.com, I have this PDF download of all kinds of resources, books and podcasts and all of that I have used and I just love to share with people. So that would be a great first step, to just kind of save that, go look at it in a moment of weakness maybe.
Definitely. We'll have the link in the show note to Erica's website and also her Substack. You need to be reading her Substack every week. It's definitely worth your time. It's aptly named. I think I said that in one of the things I shared of yours. So I appreciate you, and I'm glad for the friendship and for the work that you're doing, Erica. And we pray your blessings on your family and the work and the breadth of your new book as it hits the market in a few months. And definitely have you back on the show at that time.
Thank you so much.
It's good to talk to you today. God bless. Well, that was a great talk. Please check out Erica's links in the show notes. You can find out about her books, her website, her business, Pitch and Publish, and her upcoming book. It'll be coming out in January from InterVarsity Press. Don't forget, if you like the show, like, rate, and review it wherever you listen to podcasts. Please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, drleewarren.substack.com. That's every Sunday since 2014. I've given you my best prescriptions for how you can change your mind and change your life. Listen, friend. This work that we're doing, this self-brain surgery work, is important. It's holy ground that we're covering, because we're understanding how we're wired, how God put you together to use your mind to take charge of your brain and change your life, literally, by changing your brain. It's not a metaphor. It's a mechanism of how you get it done. And don't forget, you can't change your life until you change your mind. And that's why every week here on the Self-Brain Surgery Podcast, I'm here to remind you that the good news is you can start today.